Accusations by the Bolivian government of the opposition's attempt to push for a win on Sunday's referendum, and President Barack Obama is set to close the Guantanamo Bay prison in Cuba. Those are the headlines. Welcome to From the South. My name is Reagan. Thank you so much for joining us. The Bolivian government has called upon the opposition to wait for the final results, warning them that calling victory so early could amount to fraud. The Electoral Tribunal is still processing votes from rural areas, populated mostly by indigenous people, which is why the final result could vary from the preliminary count. However, hours after polls closed, the opposition and right-wing media outlets published exit polls, giving the No campaign a victory.
It is possible that the result will be modified by the official results once the vote of the popular areas and remote villages and neighborhoods are counted, where the movement for socialism always gets a lot of votes.
And the vote counting process in Bolivia has taken longer due to challenges in counting the rural vote. International monitoring missions certified that there were no significant irregularities during the process, but called upon the electoral body to improve its vote counting system. The final results of Bolivia's referendum are expected on Thursday. The most Zika-ridden country in Latin America, Brazil, says it will invest around $75 million toward a Zika vaccine. The government signed an agreement with the Health Ministry and the Butantan Research Institute in Sao Paulo to proceed with the third phase of the vaccine's development. Scientists are now working in trials that could last up to 1 year.
We are facing a problem which involves dengue fever, but also chikungunya and Zika. It gives me great satisfaction to be here on behalf of the federal government, signing our contribution to the process of developing tests in the third phase of finding a vaccine.
The head of the World Health Organization, Margaret Chan, visited Brazil and held a meeting with President Rousseff and other authorities. Chan's visit was focused on discussing Brazil's response to the Zika virus outbreak and to evaluate the situation. As part of Colombia's efforts towards peace, the National Attorney's Office has begun a massive exhumation at the La Macarena Cemetery. Authorities and experts believe that over 2,000 unidentified bodies are buried in different cemeteries in the oriental departments of the country, where the most heavy fighting between the FARC, the army and paramilitary forces has taken place. The process is part of a government initiative to identify the bodies of hundreds of thousands of unidentified victims left behind by the armed conflict. And after many attempts, the grandmothers of Plaza de Mayo were finally invited to meet with the government of Mauricio Macri. They are meeting as we speak. However, hours earlier, ahead of the meeting, human rights groups demanded the resignation of Buenos Aires Culture Minister Dario Lofertino. The groups went to Buenos Aires' local government to hand in a letter requesting immediate action to remove the minister. The minister had claimed weeks ago that the number of 30,000 disappeared people during the last military dictatorship was a made-up number. He further downplayed the horrors of the dictatorship by claiming that Argentina's history was not worse than other countries, and further claimed that the Montoneros armed resistance was not democratic. Worker unions and social movements are striking tomorrow against the government. One of the main themes of the strike will be the recently passed protocol on protests, which authorizes the police to break a protest within 10 minutes of its beginning. Despite government efforts to negotiate a wage increase with public workers, the largest worker union confirmed that it will join the protests and would not step down on their demands.
We went to the ministry to explain how the strike is going to be carried out, but also to make it clear that we reject and repudiate every limitation that the government is trying to impose through a protocol which limits the constitutional right of workers and popular movements to express themselves.
3 German citizens have been arrested in Chile after security camera footage showed them vandalizing a subway car in the capital city of Santiago. Authorities confirmed that the Germans will face charges for property damage. U.S. President Barack Obama has presented a plan to close Guantanamo. He argued that the prison is propaganda for terrorists, costly for U.S. taxpayers, and harms the country's relationship with allied nations. President Obama appealed to the lessons learned from the 9/11 events in an effort to draw support for his proposal.
This is about closing a chapter in our history. It reflects the lessons that we've learned since 9/11. Lessons that need to guide our nation going forward.
Meanwhile, while on a campaign rally in Nevada, Republican presidential candidate Marco Rubio promised to keep Guantanamo open. This in response to President Obama's announcement.
We're not going to close Guantanamo. In fact, we shouldn't be releasing the people that are there now. They are enemy combatants. These are literally enemy combatants, in essence soldiers, though not soldiers, terrorists, of foreign terrorist organizations, many of whom, as soon as you release them, they rejoin the fight against us. Not only are we not going to close Guantanamo, when I'm president, if we capture a terrorist alive, they're not getting a court hearing in Manhattan, they're not going to be sent to Nevada, they're going to Guantanamo. And
for more on this story, we have our correspondent Bianca Perez with more.
President Barack Obama presented on Tuesday, February 23rd, his plan to Congress for the definitive closing of the Guantanamo Bay prison in Cuba. The plan includes the transfer of 35 of the current detainees to other countries which have not yet been named, and the rest of the detainees would then be brought into U.S. soil. Depending on their level of threat, they would either go to a state prison or they would go to a military base. Some of the states that have thus far been named as possibilities for bringing these detainees include South Carolina, Kansas, and Colorado. The president did not give a definitive date for the plan, as it will be a long process which he understands at the end of the day has to be approved by the U.S. Congress. We will, of course, continue to follow this story and continue to bring you that information as more of it comes in. Bianca Perez, teleSur, Washington, D.C.
The Syrian government has accepted a plan to halt combat operations by February 27th, which excludes the Islamic State group and the Al-Qaeda-linked Nusra Front.
Syria is agreeing to a cessation of any military operations, as well as a cessation of any aggression against the Syrian army, the States Association, and the Syrian citizens, which lies in Syria's benefit. But this must not be an excuse to change the fact on the ground and stop the army's advance and victories gained during the last period of time.
The UN Refugee Agency has said that closing European borders would only cause further chaos and confusion. The agency calculates that some 100,000 refugees will enter Europe this year. It also expressed concern over refugee profiling by several countries and called on Europe to work together to deal with the crisis.
I am very worried about the news that we're getting about increasing closures of the European borders along the Balkans route, because that will create further chaos and confusion. And it will increase the burden on Greece, which is already shouldering a very big responsibility in managing these people. And this is happening when we are not yet having alternatives.
Israeli forces opened fire against Palestinian homes in Gaza, leaving one Palestinian in critical condition. teleSur's correspondent Noha Harazin has more.
Here in the Gaza Strip, Israeli forces badly injured a Palestinian man when they opened fire towards Palestinian homes eastern Gaza City. The man is right now in the hospital. The Palestinian medical sources said that he is in a critical condition. On the other hand, in the West Bank, Israeli forces arrested 30 young men from different cities in the West Bank. One of them is a blind man. At the same time, Israeli forces demolished 2 Palestinian homes in the West Bank.
Special forces loyal to Libya's internationally recognized government have successfully seized a key central neighborhood from Islamist militia. The gains were made after days of fierce clashes in the area of Lithi, which had been a stronghold for the extremist fighters. Italy's foreign ministry has asked the US government for an explanation amid reports that the National Security Agency, the NSA, eavesdropped on telephone conversations of its former prime minister back in 2011. Washington's ambassador to Rome, John Phillips, was summoned for clarification after the media reports surfaced that the Italian leader, along with some of his close associates, were subjected to wiretapping. Pauline Cafferty, the British nurse who contracted Ebola in West Africa in 2014, is in the hospital for the third time since her return to the United Kingdom. Cafferty is said to be in stable condition in the specialist unit at the Royal Free Hospital in London. According to the hospital, Cafferty was transferred there due to a, quote, a late complication from her previous infection by the Ebola virus, end quote. United Nations Secretary General Ban Ki-moon met with Burundi's President Pierre Nkurunziza in the capital amid the country's current political crisis. After the meeting, which also included government and some opposition politicians, all sides agreed to inclusive dialogue. According to Ban, Nkurunziza promised to lift media restrictions and to release 2,000 prisoners. However, the opposition is skeptical and has doubts whether the prisoners would include its supporters.
We have asked for their assistance when it comes to initiating talks to reconcile Burundians. Everyone knows that Burundians always come together when it comes to talks. We have shown our commitment with the announcements to free 2,000 prisoners, excluding those accused of disturbing the peace.
Chocolate manufacturer Mars has recalled a range of chocolate bars in 55 countries after a customer found a piece of red plastic in a Snickers bar. The bar was purchased in Germany on January 8th and could end up costing the company tens of millions of dollars. According to Mars, the recall was a voluntary one and was being done as a precautionary measure. The governor of the state of Rio de Janeiro has assured that the underground metro that will link the city with the Olympic Village will be ready on time for the Summer Games in August. This is despite a letter that was leaked to the media alleging the mayor's concern that construction won't be finished on time. The metro, a key to dealing with road congestion in the city. It will cut the current 90-minute commute from the city centre to the Olympic Village in the south by 2/3. In Moscow, sledging enthusiasts came out to take part in a competition to see which teams had the best designed sledge. Teams took turns to slide down a short slope in front of crowds who cheered for their favourites. Trophies were awarded for the most creative designs. And of course, for more on these and other stories, you can visit our website, telesurtv.net/English, and you can join us as well on Facebook, Instagram, and on Twitter. From all of us here at TeleSur's English, my name is Reagan. Have a good evening. Bye.